Ladies and gentlemen, this paper has been presented in the International Conference on Tourism Technology and Systems in 2020, and it mentions the 4C matrix for the tourism destination competitiveness. More specifically, it's about how this matrix was built using the Delphi panel. The matrix has gone through 4 phases throughout its development. The first phase is naturally a methodology approach to understand what is there in the world regarding this theme, as well as some literature review. The second phase, which is what we are going to present in this video, is the construction phase, where the methodology used was a Delphi panel. In the third phase, we have to validate the matrix through the CVC method, which stands for Content Validity Coefficient. And finally, applying a test to the matrix to see if it really works, we've prepared it in a survey as an analysis instrument and tested it on a convenience sample. In this approach, we have been able to obtain answers from tourists, residents, and destination managers alike in the city of Porto. In this presentation, we will cover 4 main topics. First, we will make a brief introduction. After this, we will move on to the tourism destination competitiveness models existent. After this, we have the 4 C's of the tourism destination competitiveness matrix. And we will finish up with a brief conclusion. This matter of the tourism destination competitiveness is fundamental for the tourism destinations, since it's their competitiveness that makes them grow and develop themselves. And that's why, for some decades, researchers have been studying and working with different matrices. Such matrices are used to understand what should the tourism destination have to do in order to develop itself. This is a very complex job, since there are matrices that are simple to work with, while some are very specific and hard to understand and work with. So our work in the first approach was based upon an extensive research on what exists so far about matrices, so all of the substantial parts, and what matrices are there, as well as essentially if there are some matrices that we might be able to apply in our project regarding the city of Porto. In our situation, we are able to come to a conclusion that it would be hard to use and implement those matrices in our project on the city of Porto. So we've decided to move on to the development phase of this matrix. And the first phase was the preliminary study phase that was already published before. The second phase was the preparation of the matrix through the use of the Delphi panel, which we will explain further on. The third phase, we validated the matrix through the use of the CVC, the Content Validity Coefficient. And finally, in the fourth phase, we've set upon a non-probabilistic approach with the use of a convenience sample in order to obtain answers from tourists, residents, and destination managers in the city of Porto, in order to understand if the results were interesting to use in our analysis. So moving on, let's present some of the tourist destination competitiveness models. The tourism destination competitiveness as a conceptual approach has proved to motivate scholars and researchers to develop models and indexes to understand how should the tourism destination be prepared. Naturally, it is prepared by tourism destination managers, but the connection with the residents is also fundamental, since it is the connection or relationship between the two that turn the tourism destination into a competitive destination. This allows for comparisons to exist between other destinations as well. But beyond competitiveness, one important factor is the sustainability, and this is only possible when there is a perfect balance in this relationship between tourists, residents, and destination managers. This will avoid some situations that have happened before in some popular cities in Europe, such as Barcelona and Venice, where the local population rejected completely the tourism. And this is why this is a constant challenge to continue to develop the tourism destination supply and attractiveness, while maintaining the balance between what residents wish for the city and what motivates tourists to visit the destination. The touristic and tourism competitiveness is essentially the capacity that the destination has to provide products and services considered by tourists as superior to other competing destinations. There are several approaches we can use to measure the destination's competitiveness. These can be the growth rates, for example, which are noticed throughout many cities in Portugal, since practically all destinations in the country have been growing. A destination must remain competitive in order to optimize all its potential. And that's why we must know that even if the touristic destination is growing, one must retain elements that can help them to continuously evaluate the tourism destinations in order to be able to optimize itself. Other destinations are doing the same thing, meaning that we could possibly call this as a race for competitiveness. There are many models, of which we show a few of them in this presentation, and they are also mentioned in the references. These models can help destinations to understand their position as well. Moving on to the 4 C's of Tourism Destination Competitive Matrix. So, phase 1 involves the research in authors that study competitiveness. We've managed to develop extensively our literature review, which is published about competitiveness matrix, about competitiveness models, etc. And we've understood that some of these models are extremely complicated, and while some were simpler, they simply were not built in accordance to our objective. We wanted to analyze the relationship between tourists, residents, and tourism destination managers. So we have prepared the matrix and asked for help from specialists ranging from university lecturers to tourism and economy professionals. For the preparation of this matrix, we've also used the Delphi panel and went through some rounds with the invited specialists. The Delphi method is a way to structure the communication process of a group, allowing a set of people as a whole to deal with a complex problem. This method, through the realization of a series of surveys, each one of them called round, allows for discovery of the opinions of a group of experts. Throughout the rounds, participants are presented with a series of propositions. The results are then handed over to the experts so they can reformulate the opinion on the proposals presented. Of course, the number of rounds will always depend on the conclusion reached by the experts. It can be 1, 2, or 3, depends. This method is essentially distinguished by 3 characteristics, such as anonymity, interaction with controlled feedback, and the statistical responses of the group. We can conclude that the Delphi method employs a group of experts in order to increase knowledge. The advantage of using this method is that it allows people who do not know each other to develop a common project without having to reveal their personal opinions to each other and reach a general agreement on a given area of interest, which in the end, it revealed itself positive as it has been created a matrix renowned by every single one of them, which better summarizes what each one of the specialists knew. So the 10 experts working together reached the final objective, considering that this is better than if they had done this project by themselves. So we went and we talked with each one of the 10 experts, and this board on the right mentions what each one of the 10 experts considers a valid point towards testing to the tourism destination competitiveness. Of course, it was important to mention what do we want to do originally, and then they helped us fulfilling this project by giving us tips on the questions we should put in the surveys regarding infrastructures such as airports, access points, roads, etc., and regarding the openness of the resident population, as well as some other topics. In the end, we have built this table containing the first round results of the Delphi panel, containing the items suggested, as well as the number of votes per specialist. This means that we can cross-check our ideas with the opinions of the experts. Moving on to the next slide, we find the second round of results of the Delphi panel. This table now contains a distribution of items among categories created. Such categories are Category A, infrastructures and equipment, Category B, human resources, Category C, promotion and marketing, and Category C, the identity of the destination. So we have requested that the specialists would place the existing items in one of the 4 categories. In the third and last round, we have taken the same table, but this time we have placed each item in its respective category, with them being, as it was mentioned before, the categories that are structures and equipment, human resources, marketing and promotion, and finally the destination's identity. In this round, what we requested that the researchers would do is that they would select a few of the most important questions. So, 10 questions for each category. so that we would be able to have end results that reveal themselves very important. After these 3 rounds, the new matrix was created. We have changed the name of each of the quadrants, so each category, into an adequate dimension. The following terminology was used to designate each of these dimensions. Capacity, which goes according to the conditions of the destination regarding infrastructure, equipment, and places to visit. Competence, which envisions the evident training of human resources and customer service, hospitality industry, and assistance. Communication, which is the destination's communication marketing, as well as internal and external publicity initiatives, so promotion, basically. And last but not least, creativity, which basically represents the novelties and attractiveness that the destination offers, as well as what distinguishes it from its competitors. So, with all of this being said, and since all of these dimensions start with the letter C, the matrix was named as the 4 C's of Tourism Competitiveness Matrix. So in the final survey, which was considered by all experts as a good contribution for research purposes, we have managed to make a 30-question long survey, with questions divided by each of the 4 quadrants or dimensions. As such, 9 questions in the capacity, 10 in the competence dimension, 6 in the communication, and 5 in the creativity. This instrument was considered by all as a very important addition, since it is much more important than each of their individual ideas, and this is the advantage of the Delphi method. We suggest to all researchers that whenever they want to create something, they should use the Delphi method or some other method which allows for one idea, together with another idea, to end up as more than 2 isolated ideas. Moving on to some final considerations. The Delphi method is possibly the most used method by researchers, which reveals the importance of a good methodology to fundament any research. Regarding the 4 C's matrix, it enabled us, a group of 10 specialists from different areas of study, to complement and ameliorate this instrument throughout the 3 phases as we've witnessed. The answers to the survey allow us to understand the opinion on the matrix's 4 dimension and compare in the future with other tourism destinations. It also allows us to compare the tourists, the residents, and the destination manager's opinions and cross-checking them in order to understand if there are any major differences between their overall opinions. This matrix was validated to the use of the CVC method, and we've managed to complete the objectives in the end, since we've obtained an instrument that's abrasive, can be used in a collaborative way through many researchers, and that was essentially one of the many objectives. This matrix was registered in the Brand and Patent Registration Office in Portugal. Thank you for your attention.